I don't see it, man. Thank you for the super chat, though. Charles? Charles in charge of our lives and our dreams. I don't even know if that's how it goes. I never watched Charles in Charge. Go ahead. Charles, unmute. You're in charge. Unmute, Charles. You're in charge. Charles is in charge. Unmute. Charles in charge of our lives.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
I never watched that show either.
What's on your mind?
Well,
You could still be in charge.
I was going to ask you about open theism and how there's a rising army of guys online who are attacking Calvinism through that. And I just wondered is that similar to an ancient heresy that the ecumenical councils have already repudiated? Or what's your Orthodox response to that God changes open theism?
No, I don't think there's any evidence in the ancient church or the Bible or theology to support the idea that God changes, because we actually confess in the liturgy that he became man yet underwent no change. So Christ did not substantially or essentially undergo any change. He changed in the sense that he entered into a new mode of being and that he became man, but he did not cease to be God. And in fact, Philippians 2 in the kenosis passage specifically states that he just simply willed to not exercise all of his powers when he became man. He didn't cease to have those powers or cease to be divine or cease to be omniscient or anything like that, but he didn't do everything he could do when he became man, and he didn't even do everything he could do when he created the world, because he could have created multiple worlds. He could have created a totally different world. And so there is potentia in God in the Orthodox position because God has free will. And that's something very different from the other positions out there, like the Roman Catholic position that literally reduce God to pure actuality with absolutely no potentiality. So, no, I don't think there's any basis in Scripture, divine revelation, to believe that God has to update his knowledge or that he undergoes change or that he doesn't have omniscience. Typically, those debates are intended on reconciling, free will and divine sovereignty with human, choice or some way to try to mitigate hell or the afterlife or whatever. And I think they're all failed projects because divine revelation is what's preserved in the Orthodox Church. So there's not going to be some new revelation or some new theology that emerges. So by default, we would reject anything that isn't Orthodox. And I mean, all the Orthodox Church Fathers teach that God's omniscient, but we do believe that God created a world where there are second causes. John Damascus talks about this, and on the Orthodox faith, there's a whole section where he says there are secondary causes. But I think that typically the debate between the Calvinist and open theist is framed as if either God is the direct decree cause of everything, or he's not, and therefore not omniscient. And Orthodoxy would avoid both of those positions.
Right. Yeah, I haven't really heard them address the incarnation, but all the scriptures talking about God repented and so on.
Well, I mean, I would agree with the argument that that's anthropomorphic language. And so God is condescending to, it's the similar, if you read Dr. Bradshaw's paper that he writes, it's in the newer Energies book. I forget the name of the paper. I think it's the one on Essence Energy, What Kind of Distinction. It's the first chapter in that book. He talks about the reciprocal relationship through prayer. So, for example, if God answers man's prayer, does that mean God changes? Because didn't God already know what you were going to pray? Well, the answer to this objection is that, yeah, God knew, but God also, because he loves man, condescends and wills to interact and respond to men. And this is the point that's missed, is that because God has the ability to act freely, because he has free will, he can choose to reciprocate the relationship with man. So, for example, in the book of Amos, God says, had you not prayed, I would have destroyed Israel. Right? But he says, you prayed, so I'm going to withhold my judgment. That means then that God willed to have that reciprocal relationship, you see. So he didn't have to do that. He didn't have to, become incarnate. But he does these things because he truly is a loving God and truly does love mankind. Bub